Hi, Sport Matters. Ian Bird here. It's Friday afternoon before the Thanksgiving long weekend, and just thought we'd put up one last YouTube video here about the campaign. And I guess it seems to me there's always three stories to these campaigns. There's the one story about what goes on behind the scenes and the pratfalls and the negotiations, and those stories are probably best left to the pub over a beer. And then there's the story of the official story of what happens on the platforms and when the candidates for public office stand up and talk to you or answer a letter or respond to us. And in that respect, it's been a pretty interesting campaign. You'll see in our synopsis just below me here on our website that we've got a particular take on things, but the simple explanation is there's a couple of new players now in the Green Party and the NDP Party who've stepped forward with their first ever significant sport and physical activity platforms. And that's a great sign, and I think we'll hear more from them over the coming years. With the two contending parties for national leadership, you're seeing quite a development. I think that on the one hand, they both have track records to point to. The Liberals, from 2001 to 2005, the Canadian sport policy, the early investments in 2010, and the early investments in Own the Podium. And then the Conservatives with the tax credit and Road to Excellence and Participaction and other things that they've got behind. So they both have good track records, and in this campaign, they've both proposed two very different policy planks. On the one hand, the Liberals have said we're going to build communities and get behind our athletes with an infrastructure investment, more sport and rec facilities and the Olympic institutes and such that our athletes will turn to and have a place to train and compete at. And then you've got the Conservatives who've really zeroed in on parents and the consumers of sport, the people paying for the registrations, and they've said that all parents now, with this new tax credit extension, all parents will receive the benefit of the credit. And we'll start to have some tax relief around the costs of participating in sport. So depending on how you see the world, you'll have a view, I suppose, of those two policies, but they both stand up and are signals from the parties about how they propose to advance sport and physical activity in the country. And I guess then the overriding issue is one that's more about leadership. And again, we've got kind of two different signals. On the one hand, the Liberals are signaling, not quite promising, but signaling an interest in establishing a minister for sport and physical activity, and you could imagine 2010 rolled into that. Certainly the Liberal caucus, the sitting caucus, is interested in that concept. And then you've got the governing Conservatives who've had some experience now with the Secretary of State for Sport and who are more cautious, I would suggest, about ministerial leadership, and seem to be more open to the idea of a separate agency and somewhat at arm's length from government to provide the kind of leadership that would unite sport, physical activity, 2010 volunteerism, the many different aspects that sit on the policy framework for sport and physical activity. So you've got, again, two different approaches in terms of how government works. So I think that's interesting, but for sure, the most interesting thing about this campaign is the third storyline, the third narrative, and that's about the Power Sport campaign itself. And I must say, we have never had this kind of uptake in interest and engagement by Canadians. Those who think there's a democratic deficit aren't talking to sport enthusiasts, apparently. Those who talk about apathy in the political process or concerns about going negative, they haven't been talking to you, the people in the Power of Sport campaign, because we've seen a frankly overwhelming response in so many different ways, and we've tried our best to communicate that back to you. And I guess the best thing to say as we head to Thanksgiving is thanks for that. Thanks for giving and for caring. And certainly this stands us in really good stead for what's to come. Regardless of what happens on Tuesday at the voting booth, I think we've got the kind of leadership now with Canadians, with you, in order to really make a difference for sport and physical activity and ultimately for Canada. So thanks again. Have a great long weekend, and let's see what happens on Tuesday. All for now.